Welcome to this episode of Against the Mountains of Madness. I'm your host, Jason.
And I'm John C. Wright.
And on this episode, we're going to discuss damsels in distress. What they were, and what's become of them. So, John, damsels in distress.
Many people are going to be tricked by our title because they're going to think we're going to say something against them. I am pro. I'm in favor of stories where the damsel needs rescuing and gets rescued by the hero. And that's for a very simple and very particular reason, which is because, as an artist, as a science fiction writer, it is my belief that your story is supposed to represent something that is true in the human spirit. Now, in the human spirit, when you have a story where a guy falls in love with a girl, if you're writing a romance novel, then you just describe, usually from the girl's point of view, the tactics she has to do to find out if that guy is going to be true or not, because the decision to marry is irrevocable. Or should be, okay? So the story is usually she has to choose between Rhett Butler and Ashley Wilkes and find out which one she's going to go with, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And she has to find out the truth about herself and the truth about her life in so doing. That's the female approach to a romance. The male approach is what I like to call the John Carter of Mars approach, where you land naked on Mars and you're enslaved by evil barbarians, and then you fight your way to the top, fall in love with a beautiful girl, and if you're on Mars, she'll be a nudist, and she's really good looking, and then you're willing to depopulate you're willing to kill everyone on the planet to get to her side, and she's going to marry another guy. So, she's trapped in a arranged marriage, or tied to a railroad tracks, or tied to the log in the sawmill, and you've got to get there and rescue her. Now, this is why that is a perfectly legitimate symbol for what goes on in the male and female relationship when we fall in love in real life. Stories are supposed to reflect real life, but they do it in a symbolic way. Mm-hmm. Now, I did not rescue my wife from a dragon, okay? I probably would not be very good at it. I'm not a knight. But I do have a knightly attitude toward her. I do have a chivalrous attitude toward her. I do find her as worshipful as Lancelot found Guinevere. Not a good example, because that was adultery. But I did save her from the dragon of loneliness. I did save her from the goblin of her last boyfriend, who was a jerk. Okay, I did come to her aid. Okay, and I devoted myself to her. Okay, as all young men who are truly in love will want to do. So the idea so if I read a story as a child about Superman who swoops down from the sky and pulls Lois Lane off the railroad tracks and saves her life, that's actually what romantically is happening in a person's heart when they fall in love and get married and they live happily ever after, if they do. Now, in real life, the happily ever after is rare, but that's the goal. That's the aspiration. Okay? From the woman's point of view, it's a lot more like a detective story or like a romance story where they have to decide between several men and they have to decide how truthful the man is, and they know the man is putting on an act because all men put on acts when they go to approach women because otherwise we're too afraid. If we're not infatuated or if we're not overcome with love, women are just too scary for us. Now, that sounds funny, but it should be scary. Do you know why it's scary? She's the judge who decides whether my bloodline lives or dies. She has the secret of immortality, as far as I'm concerned, because if I don't reproduce, my family name goes away. I'm eaten by the dust and my monuments wither. Modern men don't seem to understand that, but it's built into your genes, buddy. It's built into your nature if you don't believe in genes. Okay? So what that means is that whether we like it or not, whether we notice or not, men and women have two different approaches to the same kinds of problems. I'm not saying that men are brave and women are not brave. I'm just saying the bravery shines out in a different way. Now, if you're a writer and you want to write a strong female character, and you're a leftist, your definition of strength is masculine, because you think women are weak and you hate them. Whereas if you're a conservative, your definition of strength is spiritual strength because you love women. Okay? This is the basic political difference between left and right. Leftists hate women because they hate mankind, because they hate God. And right-wingers like women because we like mankind, because we like God. Okay? That's the fundamentally basic difference. They are on the anti-life side of the equation. We are on the pro-life side of the equation. Okay? I'm simplifying for the sake of clarity. So let's say you have a story where the female is a princess or a queen. Okay, women in a leadership role, traditionally masculine role. The reason why leadership roles are traditionally masculine is because in the household, men are traditionally in the leadership role. Now, to a leftist, that looks like oppression, like it's a conspiracy of the patriarchy. Okay, well, no. What it is back when we all lived in the woods, back in the when we were all ape men in the Serengeti Plains, the men would go out and hunt, and the women would stay home and tend the fire and tend the kids and gather the berries. We were a hunter-gatherer society. Men hunt, women gather. Okay, our skill sets were developed for that. Okay, the skill set of persistence in hunting, because we as hunters would chase game down and try to tire out the wounded game until it collapsed. That's why dogs are our best friends, because they hunt the same way. So when I'm when the man is watching the big game on TV, he has the same concentration that he used to watch the deer running away, and you can't distract him. So when the woman talks to him and says, "Hey, you forgot our anniversary," he'll continue to stare at the screen and not pay attention. Okay. Women, on the other hand, are adroit at what we now call multitasking. They can step into the forest and they can see the colors and the shape of the fruit. They will go down and they do the same thing when they go down the aisle at the market. Feeling the cantaloupes and the charmin to see if it's appropriate to eat. Okay, fine. But let me get back to my example. Suppose you had a princess in a story. Let's say it's Princess Nausicaa from Miyazaki's Valley of the Wind, one of my favorite films, and if you haven't seen it, please see it. She is not a weak character. In fact, there's one scene where she, with a stick, beats up three hulking soldiers, which she was furious over over a death. I won't reveal the surprise ending. But when she is and her men, there's 3 comedy relief minions that work for her. And they're in an airplane descending into a poisonous jungle, and she wants them to put on their gas masks. Okay? And they won't do it. They're not listening to her because they're all concerned for her or whatever. Now, she does a very feminine thing at that point, but it's still a leadership thing. She takes her gas mask off and waves at them, and they become agitated because they think she's going to be in danger because they're descending into a poisonous gas cloud. So they put their gas masks on, and they live happily ever after. She gets down, and she gives orders, and so on and so forth. Now, a man would not approach it that way. I would not put myself in danger if my minions were not obeying me. What I would do is like the guy in that famous movie Starship Troopers. I would just throw a knife through his hand, and then he would have to obey me because he would fear me. Okay, men can get other men to obey them through fear. Women are just not naturally something men can be made afraid of.
Not in that way.
Even the evil witch from Snow White's Sleeping Beauty, Maleficent, one of the most magnificent evil queens of all time, magical evil queen. She wasn't physically threatening. She could lock you in a dungeon, which she does to the Prince Charming, and she could turn you into a newt or something, or curse you so that you would die if you touch a spinning wheel. Okay, so she was scary, but she wasn't a dragon. She wasn't the Hulk. She wasn't something that was big and mighty. Okay, women trying to be scary is just absurd. All it does is make them unpleasant. Okay, it makes them nasty and loud. Because I know she's not going to kick me in the head. Now, I'm an old guy, I got white in my beard, maybe a young woman could kick me in the head, but it's not that easy. If she has to get something out of a pickle jar to do it first, then she's stuck. Because even though I don't exercise, you can see, I'm a weak man. I can still open a pickle jar that my wife cannot, that my daughter cannot, that none of the women I know can, because I just have been given greater grip strength in my hand. By Darwin, if you believe in Darwin, or by God, if you believe in God. Men are bigger and stronger than women, just by and large. Okay. So that means our approaches are different. A brave man would be like Conan. He would go in and cleave the snake in the head with a sword.
Yep.
A brave woman like Nausicaa would go in and talk to the giant bug monster and come to understand it and diffuse the situation. Let me give you another example of a strong female character. Miss Bennet from Pride and Prejudice. I know you probably don't read romance novels, but if you're going to have to read a romance novel, it's the best one to read. That and Gone with the Wind. Both excellent romance novels. Elizabeth Bennet, in one scene, stands up to the belligerent maiden aunt who wants to break up her possible marriage to the aunt's. Excuse me, I shouldn't say maiden aunt. I should say it's the mother-in-law to be. Okay. And the mother-in-law is a duchess's wife. Okay, so she has really high status. She can ruin your life. Okay, she goes and demands Elizabeth Bennet give up her hopes of marrying this fellow. Elizabeth stares her in the eye and says, "After you've insulted me in every possible way, I have no interest and no intention of changing my behavior in any way. He has not proposed to me. I have not turned him down, but I will not. I will make no pledge to refuse him because there's nothing with which you could be possibly less concerned. Okay, she just faces her down.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what goes on later is when the family does get together, her role is to reconcile any hurt feelings that were mussed up, which is not the masculine way of doing it. So she has to do things like listen patiently. She has to do things like soothe over hurt feelings. She has to do things in a feminine fashion to weave back together whatever's been put out of balance by the commotion. So women tend to be good at that. I'm not saying every single woman is good at that. I'm not saying everyone wants to be good at that. I'm just saying that nature and nature's God have set that role for you, and if you try to go into another role, you will be at best very bad at it. Women can do men's jobs badly. Okay. Now, some women can get joy out of it. Maybe. I have yet to see one or two, but I'll just take it on faith that there are a few outliers that are that way. But the majority of women, let me use another example. When a man swears in the locker room away from women and children, and correct me if I already said this. Did I mention this before? If a man swears in the locker room, it's because it shows he doesn't fear God. And so the other men around go, hey, if this guy doesn't fear God, he must be a pretty tough cookie. He must be pretty tough. So they'll be afraid of him. Okay? He goes up in the pecking order because he has a potty mouth. Among gentlemen, it's different, but let's say you're in a locker room. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
But when a woman does it, it doesn't show that she's fearless of God, because a woman is not naturally adroit. They're not naturally skilled at making grown men afraid of them. Children, yes. Men, no. So all that happens is she makes herself vulgar. She diminishes the society around her, and any children in earshot also become diminished. You see? So a woman crying, however, when she's upset, when men are upset, they swear so they don't cry, and when women are upset, they cry so they don't swear. That acts as like a fire alarm for any normal man who immediately wants to come to her aid. Okay? Now, is it wrong for women to want a man to come to her aid to fix a problem? You know, if the toilet's stuck and you can't actually physically maneuver the wrench.
Well, it depends.
And guys are supposed to be good at fixing things. Okay, I'm not good at fixing things. I'm an artist. I have a rather feminine job of putting words together like a poet. You know, I'm a poet and writing down stories. But the stories I write still have to fit into society. They still have to make the men manly and the women feminine. So strong female characters, good idea. What do you mean by strength? Do you mean masculine? Bad idea, because it's unrealistic and it teaches the wrong lesson. Okay, so let me use an example. Ripley from the second Aliens movie, good idea. She was forced into a corner. The female is deadlier than the male when you threaten the child, and Ripley was the child. And she was threatened by an evil mother, by the way. She was threatened by another female. Okay? So she puts on her lifter loader armor. It wasn't armor. It was a
power
forklift.
loader, yeah.
Power loader, and she goes after her. Okay, I'm sorry. That's excellent. That is an excellent. But she was feminine.
But it was.
She wasn't. She was. There was no machismo in what she was doing.
It was a quintessentially feminine mama bear instinct, effectively.
She turned into Mama Bear. Here's what she didn't do. She didn't write a letter of challenge to the alien queen and say, I challenge you, coward, to meet me on the field of battle. We will both use swords. And and if you lose, you will give me your armor and your horse. Women don't usually go out to meet other women to fight them to first blood or to the death. That's a guy thing. Okay? Meet you at dawn with pistols, first blood. Or death. My honor will not be satisfied otherwise. Does any woman think that's a good idea? Most women think that's idiotic because they don't understand what it's for. What it's for is to ensure the social order, ensure the pecking order. Okay? Now, if you're a communist and your mission in life is to overthrow the pecking order, overthrow the social order, you want women to act unsocially so they're out of the pecking order. So they don't reconcile to other women the way women normally do, using feminine wiles. And the men don't reconcile to each other. And the men act like women. They act like backstabbers. And I should say, when women try to destroy each other, it's usually not with fisticuffs.
No.
They usually don't say, meet me on the field of honor at dawn. They destroy each other's reputations. They spread rumors. They spread whispering campaigns. It's all indirect. Why is it indirect? They're not the kind of creatures that try to inspire fear in people, Or if they inspire fear, it's fear that you're going to be tongue lashed, that you're going to be poisoned by their bad opinion, that you're going to be ostracized, that you're going to be socially humiliated. Most women revenge fantasies are not about wrestling a Soviet trained python in a jet plane and killing the spy master with his own snake and then throwing him out of the plane after beheading him. That's not what they think about. They think about the woman who offended me. I will show her. A year from now, she will come crawling back to me and admit I was right all the time. That's a typical female revenge fantasy. They'll know. I'll show them. They'll know better. Even they're still trying to educate and recreate the harmony, because it's a female approach. So, the upshot of it is the virtues are the same in men and women. Courage is the same. There can be brave women and cowardly women.
But it looks different.
There can be thieving men and thieving women. But men and women don't tend to steal the same things or in the same way. And male bravery has an element of machismo to it, an element of showing off. It's actually kind of brittle, And female bravery is more like expressed in terms of devotion to their family, to their husband, or to their God. No one is as brave as Joan of Arc. You can't get braver than that, right? But she wasn't Lancelot. You see what I'm saying? So if you're going to do it in a story's got to reflect reality, or it's got to reflect the reality of the human heart, because if it doesn't, the story flops. Yeah. Look at the difference between Princess Leia, who was a kidnapped princess and had to be rescued from an ogre's castle. From a giant space station. And she was a tough cookie. She would take no nonsense.
She was very sassy.
She was sassy, but she was completely feminine. There's scenes in Empire Strikes Back where she's there together with Han Solo, and she's saying, "Oh, I like nice men." He goes, "I'm a nice man." She's perfect. Okay, Compare her with Rey, with Rey Palpatine from the same IP, from the same intellectual property. Rey had very little personality or none. She starts out as someone who's waiting for her parents to come back, and then we find out that they're junk dealers or something. Or later on, they retconned that, so she's Palpatine's daughter. That the character could have been interesting, but she was good at everything. She didn't need any training. She didn't have her hand cut off like Luke did. She didn't have to go to a swamp to convince a crazy frog to take her on as an apprentice. She didn't have her master cut down before her eyes. She didn't do any of the things Luke did. And she's, better than Luke at everything because she's female? Again, females, if you're going to have a female power fantasy, men have power fantasies. Look at practically any superhero comic. The power fantasy is, if I'm offended and the girl's in trouble, I will rip open my shirt and there will be a Superman shield on my chest and I will be superhuman. And I will defeat them and win. Okay? And I'll serve truth, justice, and the American way. The female power fantasy is more like, I've been wronged, and the only thing that's keeping me down, I'm already good. I'm already have accomplished the goal. I don't need a training sequence. I don't need a montage showing, that I'm getting better. The only thing that's wrong is that the people around me don't recognize it. You see? The movie Captain Marvel was just that metaphor. She had a bug on her neck. She was perfect. She was already a superhero, and she was already perfect. She didn't need to have her parents killed in front of her eyes like the Batman. She didn't have to have Uncle Ben get killed by a burglar that she let go like the Spider-Man. She didn't have to have her planet blown up from under her feet like the Superman, okay? Like, none of this. That didn't have to happen to her. She did not even have to leave Paradise Island for the sake of love like Wonder Woman does, mind you. And Wonder Woman's an Amazon, so she actually can open a pickle jar without my help. No, she's just a space being, and she's being kept down by the man, and when she decides that she doesn't need to be kept down by the man anymore, she rebels. She waves the red flag. The communist revolution happens, and then they all live in a socialist utopia. Sorry, I'm being facetious. The female power fantasy is the same as Marx's power fantasy. Marx was not a strong man, so he did not have a power fantasy about strangling a Soviet python. He's the guy who invented the Soviet Union. Yeah. But it's different. It's a different approach. So that's my little speech about don't write strong female characters unless you've met a female.
Well,
and if you're a leftist, don't even bother. Don't even bother trying because you don't understand how human beings work. Greetings, world. This is John C. Wright. I and my compatriot, Jason Rennie, take up arms weekly against the mountains of madness that are afflicting and overwhelming the modern age. You are welcome here among like-minded souls, and I hope we have provided a work of insight, hope, or humor, and perhaps an explanation of the insanity that is the modern age. For more content and conversation on these and other fascinating topics of philosophy, science fiction, and current events, please visit our Substack at atmom.substack.com. Tips, bribes, and generous patronage are warmly encouraged. Thank you.
I think while you were talking, I had the thought: how many have you seen the Terminator films? And if so, how many of them?
Yes, I've seen the first 3, and the other ones don't exist.
Okay, I would note the fourth one.
No, excuse me. I think I might have seen the fourth one.
I thought the fourth one was interesting. It's not a great film, but it's not terrible.
They undid the previous victory just to keep the franchise rolling.
Yeah, but I've seen all 6 of the films.
The first one was good, and the second one I thought was great because they turned the trope on its head, and the bad guy was the good guy because Arnold Schwarzenegger was a more famous actor by then.
Well, I was thinking,
and they had this scary, shape-changing robot policeman. That was now that girl was tough as nails.
Well,
wasn't she in the second film?
Hang on, that's what I was thinking. In the first film,
yeah,
Sarah Connor is just unfortunately going to give birth to the savior of the human race. So Skynet wishes to kill her, and she is very much a damsel in distress. She's not prepared for any of this, and Kyle Reese sacrifices his life to save her. But yeah, in the second film, but the thing in the second film, she's become a much harder, much tougher character, but she's doing all of that to protect her son.
Now let me mention something about
the mama bear again.
It's the mama bear again, but let me mention something about Sarah Connors in the second film. When she decides to break out of jail, she does not punch a single guard in the face with her little feminine fist.
No.
She gets a injector full of, I think it's lighter fluid or something terrible.
Cleaning solution.
And cleaning fluid up to the guy's neck.
You don't want it in your neck, at least, yeah.
Right. And by doing this, she can inject enough gunk into the guy's bloodstream that it will kill him.
Yeah.
It's as deadly as holding a gun to his head. Okay. Females can pull triggers of guns. They don't do it as well as men do, but they can do it. And they know about cleaning fluid, and about boo-boos and scratches, and so they know where the major veins are in the neck. That was completely legitimate. She was smart. See, she used her feminine smarts to outwit the guys around her. Okay, and it was the same. I'm not saying a guy could not have done the same thing, but she did not. She was not competing with the men. She did not have to diminish or step on any guy. She did not have to make Luke Skywalker look like a boob in order for her to get her day in the sun.
No.
And Rey Palpatine does.
Yeah.
That's the difference. That's one of the big differences.
But what I thought was interesting was in the later films. So in the third one, they've killed Sarah Connor off. She dies of cancer of some variety in the backstory. And the new love interest is much... I mean, it's still further in the past from the films they make today. So she's still a bit of a damsel in distress, but she's more educated and experienced than the street tough John Connor that saves her. But and the fourth film is sort of out of sequence. It's post when they're fighting Skynet's blown everything up. It doesn't really have. But in the fifth one, they retool it. They try to tell a different story. There's more time traveling involved, but Sarah Connor is it's young Sarah Connor again, but now she's this omnicompetent soldier that can't be stopped and is good at everything. And it's a markedly inferior film. And in the sixth one.
Don't they kill off John Connor as a kid
right
and replace him with
right at the start
a female diversity hire of color or something?
Well, what they do...
I haven't seen it, so I don't know what...
Well, yeah, right at the start, they retcon it, so Arnold goes back and kills John Connor in front of Sarah, totally undoing, the whole point, And then she meets sassy Latina female that goes on to become the new savior of the human race in an alternative timeline, and skinny amped up cyber soldier girl comes back to fight alongside aging, still nominally tough as nails, looks like she's gonna break a hip, Sarah Connor.
It just sounds terrible.
It just sounds terrible. It is a god awful movie. It is cursed by God, that film. It is.
Yeah, it is because you think you're kidding. I believe as a faithful Christian that God created male and female, created them. Okay, I think He made Adam and Eve, and that He made them differently. Okay, and all mammals are divided into male and female. You can't get around it. And when you tell a story and you say female is male, A is not A, then you're saying something illogical. Now, stories can be imaginative, stories can even be dreamlike, stories can be science fictional, but they can't be illogical. Okay?
They have to be,
Even time travel stories have to have a certain kind of logic to them, or else nothing makes sense. I mean, and that's time travel, which kind of doesn't make sense no matter what you do.
Stories have to have rules, and the rules have to be followed consistently, and they can't.
A fantastic story has to have real people in extraordinary circumstances. It's got to have someone who's normal thrown into fairyland or thrown into outer space, so that when that, even if it's Mr. Spock, even if it's an alien from another planet, okay, and he doesn't think like you, he still has to have enough in common with you so that his character seems realistic, the way the character reacts to things, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So females who try to do masculine coup-counting behaviors, or men who try to do female either good or bad behaviors, they try to be motherly, just doesn't make sense. It doesn't work right. It seems off,
Mm-hmm.
And if you push it, and if the only way you can make it, if the only way you can do it is by treading on the faces of the masculine characters to take their spot, that seems really off. That means you can't actually compete. It's as if the people on the left think women are weaker than men. They think they are inferior, and the only way for them to be equal to us is to be us. Okay?
It's the irony.
Well, I'm sorry.
Isn't it?
If you try to be me, you're not going to be me. Even I'm not really that good at being me. Okay? It's a stupid idea, and it's insulting to women. It would be as if they went to the blacks and they said, "Listen, blacks, you actually are inferior to the whites. Whiten your skin. Get a melanin, get a chemical change to your skin so that you can pass for a white, and then you will be equal to whites. And otherwise not. Otherwise you're inferior. We will help you. We want you to be equal, so we will help you. Here's some bleach." Can you imagine how insulting that would be? I don't even think YouTube will let me having said that on. I don't think YouTube will allow me to have had said that even when I said it as a hypothetical. It's so offensive, but they say that to women all the time. Cut your hair, change your genitals. You can be a man now. Take steroids. Well, why? Why do you want to be a man? Because you don't like yourself? Okay, well, get over it. Go to confession.
Yep. It's so misguided though, because you see you see Black Widow, a weird character, because on one part she sort of plays the femme fatale and does that quite well.
Yeah.
But in other scenes,
she's supposed to be a spy, not a brawler, but she's clever.
But in some of the other films, she's this omnicompetent brawler type, beating up.
Look,
that's
an excellent example. So when that 5'2" actress Scarlett Johansson gets into a fist fight with Jeremy Renner, and he's 5'7", 5'8", or something, there's no way she could hold her own against him. But even in that fight, they tried to make it look a little realistic because she kept trying to dodge and evade him, which maybe she could do. And she's a special Red Room trained super assassin. But it took me out of the picture. It looked fake to me. It looked like anytime the stuntman has to throw himself backwards when the tiny little female fist, punches him. I'm sorry, it's ridiculous. It's not the way women fight.
There's been
shoot him with a ray gun. Okay, I believe Princess Leia can shoot you with a ray gun. But even she, if you want to go into combat, let her stand behind being a princess and with the generals on the ground while you get in your skinny little fighter and go up to shoot at the Death Star. That's your job. You're expendable. She's not. She's a woman. Okay. And if you take women into combat, this has been studied, I believe, in Israel and elsewhere. If you take women into combat, the other men will suicidally try to protect the woman. It's built into our genes. It's built into our nature.
It works really badly.
It works really badly.
I did.
And then when the enemy gets them, when the enemy gets their hands on your women, their life is not going to be pleasant.
No, but I did think it was funny. It may not have been with Scarlett Johansson, but it was one of these sort of ass-kicking female action hero spy types, and the comment was the fight scenes are a collection of very obliging stuntmen pretending to be beaten up by a girl.
I believe that's all of them.
Well,
okay. Yeah.
But I thought it was funny, and I mean the thing with all this though is it's really dangerous. I mean, like, it's fine. I guess you can have these fantasies in films, but women watch these movies and then get into their head the idea that they can get into a fist fight with a man and it's not going to go really, really badly for them. I know not one but two women who that happened to them. Now, they didn't get hurt, but here's what happened. One of them was convinced that she could get out of the grip of any man who tried to molest her. She just thought she would be fine on her own. Oh dear.
You know, she could do things like travel in Europe without an escort because she just thought she could handle herself physically in case she should ever be attacked. This story doesn't have a sad ending. She doesn't get attacked. But what happens is a friend of hers once decided to pin her down with one hand while they were just wrestling around on the ground. So the guy goes like this and pins her down, clunk, and she can't move, can't do anything. You know, nothing to bite. Okay, that cured her. I put a scene very similar to that in one of my books, where a young woman, in my case, the woman was a supernatural being, but found out that women, after about age 13, women and men differentiate in their muscle strength. You know, little boys and little girls maybe can play on the same ball fields, track, and so on.
Teenagers cannot.
But teenagers cannot. The statistic says that the top-ranked Olympic female athletes perform about as well as the top-ranked high school male athletes.
Yep.
Okay. Now, the second one was just a young lady the same age, and she told me that she thought that when she was young, she had been taught that women were physically equal to men, physically strong as men. And then a friend of hers picked her up and threw her over his shoulder like Tarzan and ran down the beach with her, just kidding around. And she realized there was nothing she could do. She said, "No, if this guy was wounded and bleeding, I could not pick him up and carry him to safety. It's impossible." Okay.
And if he
intended
you harm,
you're having
there wouldn't be anything you could do about it, or you're gonna be in real trouble.
No, the most you can do is you can hope that you can drive your sharpened fingernails into his eyes, because the planes of his face will guide your fingers into his eyeballs and blind him. In which case he'll kill you, but at least he'll go to hell blind, you know, and you'll be a martyr. If you die for Christ, you'll be a martyr. Okay, I'm sorry. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. What women are supposed to do is get their menfolk to protect them. We're happy to volunteer. Even men who are not adequately able to do it will still volunteer, you know, because you're more precious than we are.
Well,
I don't think men and women are equal. I think women are more precious than men are, because they can have kids and we can't.
It's interesting.
You know, we help, but we can't nurture them.
It's interesting you say that, though, because there are a number of cases going back a while of usually single women without a man of their own to protect them, being attacked on a subway, or, you know, there was a woman that got raped in a train carriage, I think, and all of the other men stood by and just let it happen, and were basically like, or left the train carriage because this is none of our business.
That's because the men also read those stories. The men also know what happens if they interfere, is that they're going to be prosecuted as the wrongdoer. That's
part of it.
Look at Kyle Rittenhouse. He shot 3 men in self-defense, including a guy who was a known sexual molester of small children, and he was crucified in the press. And to this day, there are people who regard him as a murderer.
But the thing is,
so no.
Well,
you are correct, and I stand corrected. The chivalrous attitude, it comes from Christendom. It comes from Christ. It comes from the medieval ideals of how to use strength to protect weakness. The pagans didn't do it that way.
Well,
Okay,
it's not.
the pagan
hang
would
on.
not. The pagan would still be masculine and would still protect his women, but he wouldn't ask her to marry him. They didn't have
Well-
they didn't wait for you to consent to the marriage back in the day.
But it's not just
And
that.
usually they had mistresses and so
Yeah,
on,
well-
and they had divorce and they had polygamy and so on.
But it's not just that though. I mean, like I can understand the attitude. I mean, I understand why people would regard the attitude of the men there as contemptible. But
It is because it is contemptible.
well, of course. But on the flip side, it's also perfectly rational behavior. The men have been taught from an early age that women can look after themselves, and they need a man like women need men like fish need a bicycle. But
Right.
and more than that, because most men, and like if my wife is in danger, then I understand it's my obligation, if necessary, to die to protect her. That's the deal. That's how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
But a woman I'm not related to and have no kinship or owe no duty to, that's not really my problem. And now maybe maybe I'd be willing to go to her defense, but you're asking me to risk my life for a stranger, which I really don't have an obligation to do. And intervening in that sort of situation, when this is your woman and you intervene, other guys will often back off because, well, that's my woman. She's under my protection. But when it's
Who's the my woman in that?
well, no,
scenario?
if it was my wife.
Are you talking about if a husband is beating his wife in public?
No. If a
Because
husband, if a woman is in danger and it's like it's my wife and I step in to protect her, frequently, probably not if they're being mugged, but in a bar situation or something, the guy will step in and say, "Leave her alone. This is my wife." The other guy will back
Right.
off because she's taken. She's under his protection.
Right.
But to step in when it's not your woman, you'll be told it's none of your business, go away. And you're putting your life in, like, this other guy will beat you or stab you.
Not before the sexual revolution. Not in America.
Yeah.
Not in the West.
But in the...
After, yes, because the men have been taught the same garbage as
Yeah.
been taught to the women, that women can take care of themselves. Now, here's my question to you. When's the last time you saw a TV show or a movie or a comic book where there actually was a damsel in distress? The woman actually needed to be rescued. Anything since the 90s? Anything since 2014?
No.
Okay, any young man, 20 years old, he was born in the year 2000, okay, 24 years old, has never seen a single example in reality or in fiction, nor is it ever reported on the news, that a man came to the aid of a woman who was in danger. So he has no concept of that's expected of him. And modern society doesn't expect it of him. Modern society calls him a sexist and a bigot for thinking that that's normal behavior. And the laws will punish him. The laws will punish him because they will side with the
Well, yeah, that's
with the attacker.
But that's the other thing. If you step in and risk your life, you're just as likely to be told, "I didn't need your help," or you certainly won't be thanked for doing so. I mean, well, yeah, in what was it in New York recently, on the subway, there was a guy, I'm guessing mentally ill, dangerous, homeless guy. And he was threatening other commuters, and a Marine stepped in and subdued him, killed him in the process. Not his intent to kill him, he just wanted to protect everyone else. And then they arrested him. Like, do these people, and people cheered that on. It's like, do you people understand the next time there's a homeless guy on the train, all of the people that can make a difference are going to leave the carriage. They're not going to intervene, and then you're going to be stuck dealing with this deranged, dangerous individual. Women are learning the hard way that, unfortunately, you say to men, "We don't want your protection. We don't need you. Leave us alone." Many of them will oblige, and more so. Oh, there was
Let me interrupt for a quick question. You asked me whether or not they realize what the effect is going to be of punishing chivalry, of punishing heroism.
I think the people doing it do, but the people cheering it on don't. I don't think they grasp how bad it's going to get.
You are not as cynical as I am. I think it is being done deliberately and on purpose. I think it is being done to demoralize society and increase the crime rate to destroy society.
Yep.
Because these guys believe that a communist utopia will spring up spontaneously for no reason once the old order is swept away.
Oh, hang on. We're talking past each other then. I agree there is a small cadre of people with that intent, but the wider society that cheers this sort of thing on does not understand what they're cheering on at all.
Oh, yes. You're correct. You're correct. I'm talking of their leadership, whom I call Morlocks.
Yep.
Morlocks. I named them after the subterranean cannibal troglodytes from H.G. Wells's far future story, The Time Machine, because they're post-humans. These people are superior to human beings in their own estimation, and they look down on us. The Eloi are their food animals, and they regard the Morlocks regard the Eloi as disposable units that exist for their good. And the Eloi simply are passive and do what they're told, and they don't run away from the Morlocks. If you notice in The Time Machine, the Eloi never leave the city where people disappear every day after being fed. Okay, the Eloi simply will repeat what they're told to repeat because that has rewarded them. You know, without God, you don't believe in nothing, as G.K. Chesterton famously never said. You believe in anything, and so they believe this garbage. Once you convince a person that a man can be a woman and a woman can be a man, there's nothing you can't convince them of because they've agreed that A is equal to not A. They've agreed that all logic is a matter of opinion.
I don't think that's
quite there's no facts, there's only feelings.
I don't think that's quite the point of it. I think the point of it is to make you confess to a lie.
Yeah,
because you know
it demoralizes
you know better, but because you repeat the lie, it breaks you down. But with the
because it's something they do to make it so that you are in effect confessing their superiority. But it's indirect, kind of a female way of doing things. So almost all these guys on the left act like bitchy women. They don't act like masculine men.
Well, I said I was going to touch on that. That's interesting. You say bitchy men. It's the left. I think wants to make everybody into a bitch. Where if you and it's a technical definition of because if you think about it, when you call a man a bitch or you call a woman a bitch, you're referring to very different things, but in a sense you're referring to the same thing. Because if you think about a woman that's a bitch, she exemplifies male characteristics, but all the negative ones like being inappropriately aggressive, being unpleasant and disagreeable and nasty and
touchy.
Tetchy?
Touchy. She's too she's easily offended.
Yeah, but I mean all of these sorts of things. But things that are real actually like they're masculine traits, but they're the bad masculine traits. They're not good ones.
Right.
They're not heroic and noble and uplifting. They're all the negative masculine traits. But if you call a man a bitch,
if I may, it's the way men act, but not the way gentlemen act.
Sure. But if you call a man a bitch, you're saying he exemplifies all of the unpleasant, negative feminine traits. He's backbiting, conniving, sniveling, cowardly,
gossipy.
But again, it's two sides of the same coin. You're saying you exemplify everything that's wrong with the other sex when you call someone a bitch, and so
what the left was doing, in your theory, what the left is doing is they're trying to make
everybody a
women
bitch.
into really, really bad men and men into really bad women.
Yeah, exactly. But not just so they're not trying to make bad men bad. They're trying to make they're trying to completely turn them into something they're not. I mean, the left at the end of the day is at war with reality, so the goal makes sense. But
yep.
I wanted to touch.
They hate God, so they hate the image and likeness of God on earth. They hate men. They hate virgins. When's the last time you heard virginity praised or chastity seen as a good quality in a book, story, or film? When's the last time you saw a family that lived together? The AIs these days can't even show white families being together and being happy. Okay, our computer overlords won't allow for us to talk or have images of these things. Here's what happens when you don't have images of things in your head. It's just what you and I just said. When the Titanic was sinking, men stood aside and died so that women and children could get into lifeboats first. They did that back in the the turn of the century. That's the way the gentlemen acted. Okay, They were serious. It was a matter of life and death. They did it. There was a wreck in the late 90s or early 2000s. It was a ship that ran into a sandbar, So it wasn't going to sink. It wasn't even going to sink because it was run aground, okay? And the guys pushed the women out of the way to get to the lifeboats, shoved them so they could get there first because they looked out for number one.
Well,
Because if men and women are equal, if women can look after themselves, if women don't need men like a fish needs a bicycle, then that's a rational behavior.
that is a completely rational, reasonable thing to do.
Right.
It's wrong, but it's
If you've been raised your whole life and told that you can breathe water, and every TV show you see shows people breathing water, and then you get shoved into the lake, you're gonna try to take a breath.
Yep.
And you'll die because you've been taught the exact wrong thing. Fish breathe water, men breathe air, okay? It's the exact opposite of reality. Now, why are these guys telling us, why are they teaching us the exact opposite of reality? It's not because they love us. It's not because they like femininity. They don't like beauty.
Have you noticed?
They dress their women.
Have you noticed that with... I mean, there's a trope, and there's lots of memes going around, and the trope is feminism not even once, which is a parody of, methamphetamine not even once. But the pictures are all of these 17, 18-year-old women before they go to college, and they've usually got long hair, they're smiling, and they've got like a feminine dress on, and it's a really wholesome, beautiful photo of the woman.
Yeah.
And then in the next photo, she's gone to college for 6 months or a year, and she's come back, and her hair is either it's cut off or shaved off, or it's an ugly short haircut, just an ugly bowl haircut they get. And if she's wearing makeup, it tends to be garish and unpleasant. The clothing is like fits. To describe it as ill-fitting and ugly would probably be to praise it too highly. And they've always invariably they're frequently put on a bunch of weight, and invariably they have a really angry sneer on their face.
And usually they cover themselves with graffiti.
They're frequently tattooed, and it's a heartbreaking image. For the lighthearted jokiness of the meme, it underlies like just a harsh, tragic reality, and this is aimed at the destruction of beauty. Because
Right.
women, even a plain woman, with just a 5, I guess, or even a 4, in attractiveness on a woman, smiling is usually attractive. Like, it's not.
Yep.
I mean,
I was gonna say.
as much as I will get in trouble for saying, "Oh, you should smile more," and but there's something.
You're only going to get only the Morlocks object to females smiling. Okay. Only the enemies of mankind.
Smiling women are always more attrutive. Women with longer hair.
Because if you're
are
5
more
or 4,
attractive.
you're a dumpy woman, you're unpleasant, you have plain features. Put on a dress.
Grow your hair a bit.
Grow your hair long.
And smile.
Do the things that emphasize your femininity.
And you'll be more attractive.
And then if you find a guy and he finds out that he is the center of your life, he will stop being able to see what you look like. He will see your soul. That's the way love works. It drives people blind. He'll see you for what you are. Okay. Now that sounds like a fairy tale, and there's many women who have been heartbroken by bad men who are not going to believe me. But to me, my wife looks like the most beautiful creature on the planet. I don't care what you say. To me, she looks like a movie star, like a goddess. Okay. Now, objectively, I suppose you could say she's my age, and so on and so forth. To you, she's not going to look like the be all and end of everything. But to me, she does. When God sees your ugly face, it looks beautiful to him. Okay? So the same thing's true for you ladies. And you're not going to and the angry rebellion against beauty to make yourself ugly, that's suicidal. That's just self-destructive. It's graffiti. It's graffiti on the face of the image of God, okay? It's tragic, and because some of this is irreversible. Especially if you commit some sort of weird surgery to mutilate your genitals, you're not going to have kids. You're not going to breastfeed. You're not going to experience orgasms. You're giving up the entire romantic side of life. You're giving up the thing that civilization is designed to protect the young. If we didn't have to protect the young, if we humans could just lay our eggs in the sand like a sea turtle and go our way, we would not have bothered building huts and houses in walled cities. We wouldn't have invented writing. It's to protect the women and children. Otherwise, we guys would just hang out in the woods and have a good time and stab each other with spears and die of diseases at young ages. You know, like we used to. It's all for you, ladies. Everything's for you, ladies, and they're taking it away from you. They're taking away from you the love and help and protection of an entire generation of men. Now, there's a price to pay for being feminine, however. If you're biblical, it means that the man's the head of the household, and many of my female friends are not going to like to hearing that. But I'm sorry, if the woman is the bride is the one who gets carried over the threshold. She doesn't carry the man. Okay, there's something innate in the female character that likes leadership in men. Even women who are bossy, who have henpecked husbands, don't like them. They don't look up to them. They don't have a hero worshipping infatuation with them.
But even
it's part of nature, and you can kick against the pricks if you like, but it's part of nature.
But even then, I've heard the relationship should be the captain and his loyal first officer.
Sure. Sure. Oh, let me also finish the biblical injunctions for women to submit to their husbands. Okay. But the next sentence, and it goes on for 5 more verses, is the husbands have to be the head of the family, the way Christ is the head of the church. The way Christ is the head of the church means total self-sacrificing love.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're the head of the woman, a man, and you, as a man, have to be crucified for her. Okay, you have to give up your life for her. She's in love with you. She has done you more of a good, and you're not that lovable. And let's just confess, she's in love with you. You're not that lovable. You put a ring on her finger. She's now yours, but you are now hers. Okay, in the same way Christ gave himself up for us. So it's not a case of men just trampling women and using and abusing them. That's what leftism creates. When you get rid of marriage, you get rid of the safety belt and the helmet of women.
Well, that's
okay, and then they just get hurt.
Well, this brings up an interesting. Well, I mean, it's the irony, isn't it? Leftist women complain that men are awful and creeps and rapists, and then you meet leftist men and you go, it's because you surround yourself with these guys. But
and those creepy leftist men want to take your gun away from you, ladies. Yeah. I assure you, the equalizer can actually equalize things like nobody's business.
But you were talking about how women lose this protection. Theodore Dalrymple, in his book Life at the Bottom, has this absolutely tragic story. You grabbed me an excerpt. We grabbed an excerpt of it beforehand. But he was working as a doctor in an ER, and a woman has come in, and he said, I warned her as graphically as I could that she was already well down the slippery slope leading to poverty and misery, and I knew from experience of untold patients she would soon have a successive of possessive, exploitive, and violent boyfriends, unless she changed her life. I told her that in the past few days, I'd seen 2 women patients who had had their heads rammed down the lavatory, one who had had her head smashed through a window and her throat cut on the shards of glass, one who had had her arm, jaw, and skull broken, and one who had been suspended by her ankles from a 10th floor window to the tune of Die You Bitch. I can look after myself, said the 17-year-old. But men are stronger than women, I said. When it comes to violence, they're at an advantage. That's a sexist thing to say, she replied. A girl who had absorbed nothing at school had nevertheless absorbed the shibboleths and political correctness in general, and of feminism in particular. But it's plain, straightforward, and inescapable fact, I said. It's sexist, she reiterated firmly. A stubborn refusal to face inconvenient facts, no matter how obvious, now pervades our attitudes between relations between the sexes. And she's gonna die. Like that girl is gonna die. She's gonna come to an absolutely horrible end.
Ideas kill.
Have consequences. Well, he talks about in the same book. I read it. I really enjoyed it. It's quite interesting. The men are violent like that because they don't have marriage. They don't have expectations of loyalty and chastity.
Fidelity is the word you're looking for.
Fidelity is the word I'm looking for. Thank you. You're right. They don't have traditions of that among the underclass. So the men have to assert that through being possessive and violent. They don't have any choice.
They're incentivized.
Yeah.
Violence is incentivized because only a violent male can keep the woman from cheating on him because she has to fear him, and only a violent male can keep other violent males away. It's a syndrome. It's a syndrome of behavior that's self-reinforcing. You see, chivalry is better. I assure you. I solemnly assure you that marriage is a better institution than this
hookup nightmare.
It would be an insult to my caveman ancestors if I called it a caveman behavior. It's not a caveman behavior.
No.
The cavemen had marriages. We know that they did. Okay, this is post-Christian. This is anti-Christian behavior. This is trying to destroy mankind. But getting rid of marriage is the first step. Okay, destroy mankind. Because if you don't have marriage, you have a generation of bastards. In America, let me mention a statistic that you might find interesting. In America, the crime rate between the blacks and the whites is far different. The blacks are 13% of the population at the moment in America, and they commit about 75% of the violent crimes. Okay? But if you factor out blacks who have father and mother living at home, blacks raised by two parents, their crime rate is the same as the whites. So all that violent crime among our underclass in America, and our underclass is not just blacks, but it is disproportionately black, all that violent crime is caused by bastardy.
Yep.
And bastardy is a word we can't even use these days. I've been chided for saying it. It means that the child of an unmarried woman, gentlemen, ladies. That's what the word means. The reason why the word has a bad implication is because children raised without their fathers don't have a role model to learn how to control their violent masculine impulses, because men are naturally violent. Even a peace-loving fellow like me, I think in terms of, I'm a philosopher, okay? My idea of a good time is arguing abstract metaphysics with people. But I see it in terms of a metaphor of a joust. I see it as a matter of honor, not to retreat from a question and to engage my enemy. I mean, I think of it as knightly combat.
You use martial metaphors.
I use a martial metaphor. If I was a woman, I would not. If I was a woman, I would. Belay that. Not all women are women. Some women do not have a female approach to things. The female approach would for me to be to try to understand what my opponent's point of view was and what was secretly motivating him to be that way. You see? Because the females, I think, want to see what the inner truth of things are, and men are just more interested in the task. And by the way, it can go wrong. When a female says, why don't you, I heard just this week, someone was discussing, females ask you for some small favor, like remember our wedding anniversary, or send me a text every morning saying hello. And the guy forgets because we're forgetful. She uses her ability to try to see the inner heart of things to try to ascertain what his motive was for doing that, but she can't ask him directly because women have found out that if you ask a man directly, he's probably not going to give a direct answer. He's going to say, hey, I love you, baby, whether he loves her or not. Okay? Both the knight and the knave are going to answer the same way in that case. So she can't rely on it. So she has to suss out what his motives are, and she thinks it's because he's losing interest in her. Okay? So she will then begin to notice or begin to ask him for other small favors, and he will continue to forget because he's forgetful, because he's a man. And then she will come to the conclusion that she sees his real motive, which is disinterest, and then she'll fall out of love with him, and they'll break up, and it'll be a nightmare. Okay? Now, from the men's point of view, she is reading into things that don't seem to take place. She's never going to directly confront him, so she's only going to complain about other things, not the tweets you forgot, not the anniversary date you forgot, because, and from her mind, your job is to remember the anniversary date, not to have her remind you of it. Because if you really loved her, you wouldn't need to be reminded. That's a female approach. Okay, but here's the thing: if the guy is weak, the women do this more often. The women get more indirect. They get more nervous about what your secret motives are. Now, if she was a telepath and could read the mind of the guy, he was thinking about the game. Okay, but he still loves her.
Yeah.
Okay,
or he was thinking about nothing.
He was task oriented. He was thinking about the deers running away from him and having a dog or whatever. Who cares what men think about? They're not women, so they're expendable. So the old phrase that weak men make women crazy, I think, is true, and is true for a very understandable psychological reason. And strong men, women like that, and women won't play games with a strong man. They won't have to outwit you. If they know you're honest and true and truthful, and that your love is as certain as a steel beam, why would they have to play little tricks on you to have you prove your love? And once you've saved her from a dragon or from a Soviet trained python, you've got it made. You got it made in the shade. The Theodore Dalrymple story, however, is so terrible because that woman is going to die, and she's going to die because she's been taught the wrong stories. Storytelling is very important in our society and in any society. Storytelling is how you get the spirit of your country, the spirit of your people, the spirit of your age instilled into you. And if the wrong spirit is instilled, you will trample women to get to the lifeboat. If the wrong spirit is instilled, you will sit there and watch a woman on the subway being beaten to death, and you will not lift a pinky to help her. If you have the wrong spirit instilled in you, you will think that you can handle yourself, ladies, and you'll step into a situation where you can't.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to happen to Theodore Dalrymple's patient.
Yeah. Well, there's speaking of women testing their men, there are stupid TikTok challenges going around. Of one of them was a woman was encouraged to make a mess, like pour a condiment out on just deliberately and gratuitously maliciously make a mess, like pour ketchup over the counter or something, and then ask the man to clean it up, and depending on whether he does it or not or how he does it determines how much he cares for you. And most of the guys would just do it, but were like, why did you do that? It's just, it's painfully stupid to watch.
It's painfully stupid because that's actually a power play. That's not a part of the mating dance. The mating dance has to be kind of indirect because men and women are sinful mortals, and you can't just agree on a handshake to fall in love with each other. We kind of don't know ourselves at the beginning, But that kind of thing, that's just a power play. Yeah. I saw a TikTok thing that was the opposite, and it was incredibly stupid for the opposite reason. A young, fairly attractive woman would ask a guy to pick her up and carry her across the street. And every guy that they showed agreed. And he got his hands around this curvaceous woman, and he picked her up and he carried her. And she thought that was a sign that they were easily manipulated or something. She thought that was a sign of them being humiliated. And I was like, are you kidding? Men would pay money for that. Men love carrying women around. You carry your bride over the threshold. Tarzan throws Jane over his shoulder. It's one of our favorite things to do. My friend earlier that I mentioned, when she found out that men were stronger than women, it was because he picked her up at the beach and ran down the beach with her in his arm. Okay? Because it exaggerates the difference between the sexes. Any social symbol, the sex behaviors are like language. Every human race has language, but the words we pick are different. Every human race sees the sexual differences, but we use different tropes to exaggerate them. Paint your lips red, for example, or grow your hair long is fairly common to all races, but more than some than others. So anything that makes a man feel stronger, physically stronger, that's a sexual differentiation. If a woman looks physically stronger, that doesn't turn men on because that's not a sign to us men of sexual differentiation. No. But if you can grow your hair longer than I can, any hair would be longer than mine, that's a sign of sexual differentiation, and it looks gorgeous on us. That's why the shampoo industry is $1 billion industry in the United States, because it's a sign. Okay, that's why high heels, even if they're uncomfortable, high heels exaggerate the female walk so that the woman look like she's in that period of month where she's fertile. They did a study where women on just the silhouettes of women walking by, and the men rated how attractive they found the women walking, and the women who were in heat, the women who was the time of month when they were fertile, always rated higher. And then they found out that the reason why high heel shoes are so popular is because they mimic that type of walk. They make women, they sexually differentiate the two sexes, and they make the woman more attractive on an instinctive level. It's not like men sit here and calculate, oh, she must be fertile this week. Well, who are the guys telling stories where princesses save themselves without a prince? That they just do it by themselves. Guys who don't want us to be attracted to women. Guys who don't want us to reproduce. I keep saying guys. Let me just say devils in hell. The devils in hell don't want the human race to reproduce. They do it in a number of ways. Sexually mutilating the genitals of children is one way. Erasing the sexual differentiation between the two sexes is another way. Mocking virginity, chastity, and motherhood is another way. The devil hates virgins. The devil hates mothers, and the devil hates the virgin mother most of all. Okay? And if you're falling into his camp and you're telling his type of stories, A, they're bad stories, and B, you're working for the devil. Okay?
Don't do that. Well, that seems like a good place to wrap up. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Like, share, and subscribe, and don't forget to check out our Substack. And we'll talk to you next time. Thanks for joining me, John.